In the morning, we played with Nora in the living room. I'd set up all her stuffed animals on the chair. She laughed when she saw them all. She picked between her lamb and her elephant to play with today. She went back and forth between Miriam and I. She started to understand how her paint markers work lately. She did a pink stripe on one of the knees of my pants and an orange stripe on the other. She played with her toy cars. She carried both of them to daycare, one in each hand. Instead of pushing her in the stroller, we pushed her in her green car, which she's had more fun with lately. It's so loud when we push it down the sidewalk that we didn't talk much on the walk, which was okay. I'm sitting beside the car now, here at the coffee shop. The 2 toy cars and the cup holder. I've been editing my book, and Miriam catching up on her legal readings. We will leave soon to pick her up from daycare. Nora didn't cry when we picked her up this time. We took her home. Miriam put her to bed while I got lunch together. I sat at the kitchen table and went on YouTube. Somehow I don't feel the urge to write very much. I began to feel nauseous, so I went to lie down, began throwing up. The last chapter, I seemed to go very far down a path. It's a lot of melancholy. Too much, maybe. I wanted to allow myself to take that as far as I could, but I'm worried now it's too far. That said, I don't know how much control I have over the choices I make that way. I try to allow whatever comes out, and to be honest and unashamed about it. I slept again. I can't seem to focus enough to write. I wanted to write about how the edit was going. I'd become so weak these last few days with the sickness, vomiting every few hours, making all kinds of ungodly noises. For the most part, I just keep going on YouTube. I don't know what I'm watching really, just passing the time, to take better care of my body, to find a way to strengthen my immune system. I keep getting sick. Now Miriam's sick. She threw up last night. Slept through, and then this morning her temperature was all off and she's very tired. I was with Nora for the last few hours. She's still in good spirits. She's sleeping now. Hopefully we'll stay asleep for a few hours. I could see that as I got better, my ideas started to come back. Things would just occur to me to write down. Whereas when I was sick, it was so much more vague. I would catch little things, but they seemed to move slowly and hang above me in a meaningless way. Whereas now that I'm feeling better, they strike in a different way. I wanted to write about what I wanted to do with this book. Since the last chapter, I feel like I may have exercised a certain demon for the time being. To go so far in that direction. To admit the want to be successful. I probably have written about it before. But I feel like the money side of the whole writing thing, the idea of making real money off of it, I've let go of that. But the recognition side of things, I'm still holding on to that side of things. That there's something underneath it all that I'm looking for. And it does seem to be a spiritual question more than anything. A decision I feel like I've come to is that I will self-publish this book. The idea of going through the traditional publishers, I don't really see it working for me at this point. Instead, to just print it my way, to handle all the details myself, to print the book and send it to the people that I know, and then to move on to the next one. To go ahead and do it again. The same kind of writing, the same kind of routine. It will take me some time to get it together, but that is the way that will work best for me. When someone self-publishes a book, there's a bit of a patheticness to it, but I don't really care at this point. I'm more interested in going through the motions of completing and releasing the book, and then writing another one, than having it come out with Penguin, Random House, or whoever. Maybe one day they will come and say they want to do something with me, but it feels so completely out of my control. My book has no real logline, no real hook. It just isn't built for their system. Instead, I'll do it my way and get it over with. Because the point of all of this, it isn't to publish, the point is to write. And I see self-publishing as a way of inevitably getting to spend more of my time writing the things that I want, rather than spending time querying and worrying about publishers. The thought of having to deal with editors, I don't know, maybe one day, but I don't really want anything to do with that these days either. I want to do it my way. I'm so content to sit and write today, to sit here and have the ability to get my thoughts in order, to come up with some new ideas. It's really the point of this book, if there ever was one, to sit and be able to enjoy the time to write as I am able to. The joy of writing more and more pages and having them stack up in a pile, and what it feels like when they start to create this new kind of meaning that you could never have foreseen, that they show you who you are in a way that you cannot deny, and that the more you write, if you can get through the difficulty of it, that inevitably you cannot help but fall into these pockets of joy. Maybe they are few and far between, but they are there. Writing shows me that it is our nature to resolve to find them in some way or another. I have the sense, for the most part, my work has a way of being too melancholy, that it is something to be ashamed or embarrassed about. One day I will stop caring about that, but there's still a side of me that thinks I should be some other way. I don't know there's much of a point of trying to guide the ship somewhere else. Instead, to let it play out, and to resolve as it will. I keep thinking of yesterday, when me and Nora were playing and she took her toy hammer from her toolbox and smashed it onto my head and laughed hysterically. And I tried not to laugh to encourage her, but I couldn't help it. So I've spent the morning writing, and now I have a bit that I can work with. It is a relief. I feel elated about it. It seems this ability to write. I don't know what it is that brings me this amount of relief, of focus, of fulfillment. I know that it brings the opposite feelings as well, and that happens. But still, I never seem to lose sight, even when it feels like it is at its most difficult, of the fact that it needs to be done. Now that I seem to have made the decision to self-publish, after Nora smashed me in the head with her hammer, I do not have to worry about things. The book will come out. It will happen on my own terms, with my own money, and from there, the rest can happen as it will. When I was sick at some point in the middle of the night, it was like I was dreaming while I was awake. There was an image of a military general with a pig's head and a candelabra burning through his face. From there, it seemed like things fractalized into some kind of golden floating pyramid-type shape. There were some other things I can't remember them as much. Massive, eyeless, multi-headed dogs with fangs that protruded above their own heads. I didn't know what to do with the image as it persisted in my mind. It seemed to leave an impression like the way the sun can from catching a glimpse of it. It was a haunted image. I don't think there is much that it meant or to interpret. Maybe it was a representation of the fear that I felt, that I could not seem to manage, the panic that I felt in the sickness, not trusting that it would end. I seem to have something in me when I get sick that cannot trust that I will ever get better, that my anxiety overtakes my logic and I cannot always calm myself down. Miriam came and saw the state I was in and she helped me. She cleaned up the blankets and the pillows and got me to go back into bed, and she calmed me down somehow. She put on a movie for me to watch and I began to calm down. And so it seems I'm in a good headspace today, how I'm feeling better than I was. And now, to figure out how to keep my anxiety and stress under control. To have been sick as often as I have, twice in a row these past few weeks, I can see how it is from the stress and the anxiety that I feel every day. And I think of self-publishing as this thing that is the only possible way I can think of that gives me any agency here, that gives me any control, any hope of being who I want to be, that it isn't about how many copies of the book I can move or how much I can make, but rather that I wrote the thing and finished it and sent it out and moved on. That is a complete cycle that I think we need somehow. Our psychology needs that in order to resolve. I thought there was something about reading over everything in the Starbucks last week and then getting sick right after. I was saying that I was superstitious about reading it, and then I got knocked out for a few days there, back into the hole, I suppose. Thinking of that pilot light metaphor I've been going with, getting too close to the fire, as exactly how it felt to be in bed against that flaming pig demon and all that. And so, to recognize that total hellscape when I'm entering it, and to find some way of getting through it, of going somewhere else. I suppose the question is, if that kind of thing is eternal in a person, if it can be defeated, or if it can only be avoided. To take care of my body, to have the patience to stretch in the morning, I feel like if I can find a way, I feel like I'm separate from my body in a lot of ways. If I can learn to come back into myself, somehow that seems to be a part of this. I went into the bedroom. Miriam said she was trying to catch up on her readings, but her eyes became tired. She would get there, bit by bit, just keep chipping away. I asked her about some stretching I could do. She showed me. There was a softness between us. That is all I want for us, for our marriage to stay in that pocket together. She showed me 3 simple moves. To stand with my arms straight upward, to hold that for a minute or so, to bend down and touch my toes with my knees bent, and then to straighten my legs and try again to touch my toes. That would be enough to start. I sat on the toilet for some time, and when I finished, I looked into the bowl. A floating black and green perfect piece of shit floated in the water. My stomach felt much relief. It was the melancholy there. I had passed it. Perhaps it was not me that was the melancholic, depressive, self-loathing monster. It was something that passed through me as it did. As I wiped my ass, I remembered I'd always wanted to write a book or a screenplay and call it Fuck You. I don't think I'll use that title for this writing, but I've remembered it again lately, and the joyful impulse it is. The joy of saying fuck you to some vague force out there, to no one in particular, but to everyone at once. The beauty of the phrase. I am as much the ultimate pathetic amateur as I am as natural and gifted as a writer as there ever was. I wonder if there is a scene in this entire book that will be recognizable as a scene in a book at all, or if it will all wash over like foam on a wave. And I think again of the phrase in all its glory, fuck you. I'm impressed to see the word count I've reached today. And I think back to where I began with this book, thinking mostly of that alone. I will leave that here for now, in the toilet bowl, flushing it away, washing my hands with all of the soap, and I'll try again now to go ahead with things. I'm remembering I lay on the ground yesterday on the rug, leaning my head on the couch, probably worsening my neck pain, but being too lazy to reach for a pillow or fix my posture or something like that. It felt good, in a way, to have this wave of laziness after being sick, like I could recognize the tension now that I've been carrying for the past months. Nora stood above me, her balance now steadier than ever. She stood at her dollhouse, hitting the doll against the railing, her race car in her other hand. She stepped over me and sat on my stomach. She pointed to my nose, fitting her finger inside of my nostril, and then pushing on my nose, flattening it, laughing, and then putting her finger on her own nose and then inside of her own nostril. And then she reached her finger and tried to poke my eye. A feeling came over me, one that I hadn't felt like I could get to in a little while. I don't have a realistic sense of how long, but a distinct feeling of envisioning myself in the future, myself having endured whatever is to come and becoming a bit more confident, a bit more stable, but most of all, less anxious. That is the one, I think, that I want to shed more than anything, is the anxiety, that tightness, the idiocy, and the rapidness and the stomach acid that comes along with it. If I'm able to be as blatantly honest as I possibly can, lately there have been times where I can't imagine it, but I caught a glimpse of it lying on the ground there, as Nora played with her dollhouse, of persevering through all of this, whatever this is, to be there for her, to self-publish my books, to be a good husband to Miriam, to go on walks together, to eat our meals together, to be near one another, for whatever time that there is, and I hope there is a lot. I'm thinking back to when I read over the beginning of this book when I was at the coffee shop last week. How small me, the narrator, was, a tiny pinprick of light inside a cold mound of unfit flesh. This sad, melancholic child, rendered helpless by the impression of, or the echo of, this ego bloated from malnourishment. And upon learning of my dad's brain cancer, it seemed I went down to the core of that ego, of where it began. But with each page and with each chapter, the power of that ego that demands, like a child screaming in the grocery store for a box of whatever fruit snack they saw during the commercial break of their cartoon, throwing the boxes off the shelves onto the ground, screaming, the parent walking away from them to leave the child to embarrass themselves alone. This ego demands, like the tantrum-addicted child, that he is a writer, that if he does not write, he will die, that if he does not find the success that he imagines, that he failed, that his life was a failure, that sitting with the family, if not to be used for material to write about later, that it was a waste of time. That is how it can feel, that ego that says, I am nothing but a writer. It is its own kind of cancer. But I must have this box of fruit snacks, and if you don't buy it for me, one day when I grow up, I'm going to eat these fruit snacks alone, and you will see then how powerful I will become. I will become as powerful as the hero on the box, and I will not need anyone. I will be respected and revered and anonymous, and I will eat my fruit snacks, and I will write my book, and I will build my fortress, where I can be a glint, alone in my own reality. But this daughter of mine, climbing onto my chest as I lay on the carpet, weak from the sickness she brought home, from the daycare, from the park, her drool pours from her mouth and lands onto my face. She takes the wooden hammer from her toolbox and smashes it onto my head and laughs hysterically, as God will laugh hysterically, as the world will laugh hysterically at this little castle I've built. And she bashes the ego from my head and demands I become healthy again, and demands that I wake up and stretch and eat the food I need to eat, and change the diaper and walk her across the room and hold her when she screams, and hold her in the pet store so she can see the birds and the fish and the gerbil and the cat, and when she throws her food off of her high chair behind her head, wasting our money, wasting our time, and when she goes into the store and demands whatever she wants and begins crying in the aisle, and she bashes the hammer onto my head and laughs, and the joy of it breaks you to nothing. You are not a writer, she said. Your book is nothing, she says. You are not you. You are my dad alone, she says, and I am all of the light that there is. When I was upstairs taking a shit, perhaps for the third time today, my wife and I both seem to be using the toilet constantly today, both recovering from the same virus that Nora brought home from the park or from daycare or wherever. This shit, a strange, long, and easy curl that needed more wiping than I would have expected, unfortunately. I thought that maybe the thing to do would be to pose this book as fiction, as a completely made-up novel, and in that way I could send it to any publisher, as opposed to now the blatant, we do not accept non-fiction memoir. Well, why not lie? To lie about the truth is fiction. What an insignificant lie. I can hardly wrap my mind around the absurdity of it, thinking of the public shame those who turned fiction into memoir as. Instead, why not then pose the truth into fiction? How real and authentic it would feel, wouldn't it? The story of a man, a newly minted stay-at-home dad, who had given up his job as an instructor here at the local film school, teaching screenwriting and finance, but abandoned his post to stay at home with his 6-month-old daughter while his wife finished her law degree. And as this man, then 36 years old, gives up what he knows, what it means to be a man, to earn money, his father is diagnosed suddenly with a terminal brain cancer, and so the novel begins. It seems that, is a decent, and I would say, surprisingly by my standard, coherent synopsis of the novel that I'm working on. As completely and utterly hopeless as I am about it being published by even the least reputable publisher on the planet, I suppose in those terms, it sounds like something. To self-publish or to send out, we will see, but the book is not done yet. It seems that the book I've described, it cannot be finished until the full extent of my father's illness is revealed. But maybe that isn't the book, and instead the book is more the cycle of what this year has been, and what the process of building this book has been. From what I can tell, I'm approaching about the point where the climax should be, and in some ways I have the sense that I may be coming out of it, that the catharsis of the neuroses, the momentum that began this book in the first place, that it is coming down somewhere, and that it is time now to slowly see what has happened since then. I have the sense, in a way, that this should be severed and used as the beginning of the book, an introduction. This is what I was afraid of, reading over everything, was that I would lose the forward momentum and instead begin rewriting and not continuing onward, because it seems that editing is one thing, but inevitably writing is not editing, as I sometimes hear. Writing is writing. It is writing this sentence and the next, and the ones that are good, they were good from the gate. It was not the construction and the precision and the competence of the sentence that made them what they were. It was what the sentence was trying to articulate in the first place. It's not journalism or an email or an instruction manual. It is meant to be fucked up. It is meant to be personal. And so its integrity, its pragmatism, has to be in its ability to be strong in its raw and inevitably odd shape. And that is the thing, one of the ultimate ironies. If it is true, it is unique, and if it is unique, it is alienating, to an extent. And to the other extent, that same truth also causes it to connect that glimpse in the dark to all of the other light that is out there.